Hi, welcome back to day 11 of my 30 days 30 builds challenge. If you've been enjoying it this far, please leave a like and maybe consider subscribing. It means a lot to me and I really appreciate all the continued support on all these shorts and videos. Now with all that clickbaity stuff away, I really wanted to say thank you guys so much for any and all support. I've been reading all your lovely comments on the shorts and I know these videos don't get as much through rate as the shorts, but I'm really appreciative and this is really the only time that I can convey that. Now with that being said, today's episode is stone. It's been something that's been around since literally the dawn of Minecraft and it's something that is commonly overlooked in a lot of the building types. It is something that's boring and a bit basic, but I wanted it to be the star of this show. Stone is a very boring block, and that was one of the struggles that I was facing with this build. I had images and references of a steampunk England sort of inspired building, maybe like a community centre or a government building, but it was really hard to pull off in the end. I think it felt a little bit flat and I think I could have done it a little bit better had I given myself more space. I don't know why I constrained myself in the beginning to these little red squares, but now I'm sticking with it and it's kind of biting me in the butt a little bit more often than not. I really want to do big grand builds and I'm thinking that maybe I might get rid of the red square effect just to allow myself that creative freedom. But today's build is very basic. It's not something that I'm super proud of, it's not something super detailed, but it is another entry into our 30-day series and it's definitely a learning experience at that. Now I know I do dark prismarine in every single build, but I really could not think of another colour that would better complement this. I needed to add some variation into the grey monotone and just the deep colour of the dark prismarine worked really well with a lot of that English architecture that I was referencing. It is something that I use a lot and it is probably overused at this point, but it was the only thing that I could think of working in with these roof lines. Now, while building this structure, it was extremely boring. It was a very blank canvas that I didn't really know what to do with. So I was trying to add these little elements and these little jut outs in the roof lines and stuff like that, but I miscalculated. So you're gonna see me building up this amazing roof line with a peak, and then I realize it's a 2-block center, and I have to then grapple with myself on whether or not I want to tear it down or not. And at first I was like, you know what, it's fine. Perfection isn't a thing that I need to strive for. And then it started eating me away slowly and slowly, that little niggling feeling in the back of your mind. And I ended up tearing it down and redoing it with World Edit. It was honestly at this point though that I lost my fire towards this build. It really wasn't looking that good. It was my third iteration of this structure and I really just wasn't feeling how basic the stone was. And yes, I could have totally just changed out the block and just changed the day, but I picked out stone. Stone was what we were allotted for today and I really was trying to make it work in a build structure way. But it just doesn't look that visually appealing. I should have done so much more and I'm kind of kicking myself looking back on this because of how little I actually did. I think in future it is something that I'm going to have to work on and it is something that I'm going to have to improve on consistently. Just because I get a boring block doesn't mean I should produce a boring build. Now this is another thing that I wanted to talk about, and that's building burnout. It's when you have really good builds, or at least you think they're really good builds, and then you have one day where you're just not feeling creatively inclined. And throughout the course of this 30-day building experience, that has been a lot of the time. I just get in my head a little bit too much when building these things, and I think that they need to be some grand statement piece that can have a lot of pull through, or they look good in a thumbnail, or whatever else. And it definitely impacts the way that I build. I have done 2 more builds since recording this and they fall into the same category. So the next 2 builds will be very similar in vibe and aesthetic, but I think after these builds go out, I'm gonna have to have a dramatic shift in mindset. And that's the problem with a boring build. There's not much to talk about. I didn't really add any details, I just did minimal and basic texturing. It's a really sad build, and even when I was staging it, which you'll see later in this episode, it just wasn't feeling quite right. There was something about it that just did not fit in, and when I was trying to add any terrain around it, I just realized that it was built with no vision. And that's something that I would recommend to a lot of different builders, is build with a vision. Build with the intention of what you're going to put around it while building, so that you can add in elements and details that really complement whatever's going to be around it later. It can look good standalone by itself, but a lot of the time buildings get elevated by what you put around it, and putting a little bit of thought into that while you're building the main structure up is extremely beneficial in the long run. You can see here that I'm trying to add windows at the top and a little bit of details here and there, but it just really wasn't flowing the way that a normal build should. The motivation for it just wasn't there, and even when I was changing out textures and I ended up liking a lot of what I was putting in, it just still wasn't lighting the fire that some other builds have done. That's just how it is, and unfortunately that's just something that you have to play with a lot, and because I'm doing this daily, it's not something that I can really give myself time to improve on or come back to at a later date. What I build is what I have to send out, and for better or for worse, I think that is changing the way I build, and that is something that I have to adapt with. I really tried to save this build with a couple of trees in the front, but it really was beyond saving at this point. So anything that I was adding was kind of like adding decorations to a turd on the street. It wasn't going to get better, it was just going to try and hide and distract from the fact that it was a subpar build that personally I would do a million times better had I had the chance to redo it. Now here comes staging, which as I said previously, I did not have a vision before building this structure, so I really went into staging completely blind. I kind of internalized a lot of my dislike for this build, so I decided to hide it in a mountain range. Maybe it could be a temple or a school that's, on top of a cliff face, maybe looking down on the city. But I knew that it wouldn't be something that I would want around other buildings. I played with Axiom's auto shade feature and absolutely got so frustrated at it that I just gave up and went back to world edit and basic painting. But it's something that I think lacks a little bit of direction. It ended up looking okay in the end, but it's something that I think I need to work on in future builds and have a clear idea of what I want to do in the staging stage, just to help myself out. Now with that being said, let's end on a light note. I really appreciate you sticking around this long, and any sort of likes, subscribes, or anything like that would be much appreciated. I know today's build wasn't the best, and I hope to improve on this in the future, but I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.